Hello, Journey family and friends. Pastor John Hampton here with this week's edition of Midweek Conversation, and joined not just a guest, but someone that you're going to see more regularly around a Journey and probably even a part of these conversations.
Yeah.
Pastor Kevin Monahan, you want to do the boom, there you go.
Yeah,
Pastor
man.
Dustin would be proud of that.
Yeah, he would.
This is Pastor Kevin Monahan. Kevin is our executive pastor, our new executive pastor here at Journey. We'll get into a little bit more of what that means, but welcome, Kevin.
Well, it's so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be at Journey. It feels like family already. I'm here just a short period of time, and everybody's been so welcoming to my wife and my kids, and we're excited to be here, Pastor John. It's great. It's great to be on this kind of weekday conversations too.
Yeah.
I'm watching it online from afar, and now to be in the room and talking with you and being part of the team, it's kind of exciting. So yeah, it's great.
Well, what I want to do today in Midweek Conversations, we introduced Kevin, his wife Megan, their children Jacob and Aiden and Olivia. You see their picture here. This past Sunday.
Yeah.
And just spend a little time for you to hear from Kevin and get to know a little bit of his story. So let's just start there. You and Megan been married how long now?
Yeah, so we've been married 22 years. So we were married in 2000, like January 8th, 2000. Right? Originally it was going to be January 1st, but any of you that are old enough to remember Y2K,
oh, yeah.
we're like, we're not doing a wedding on Y2K. So we put it back one. So all I got to remember was what year it is, and I know how many years I've been married. So
gotcha.
So 22 years. We've got 3 kids, like you said, and Jacob, who's 18, just finished high school, and he's going to go to Valencia and wants to be a firefighter paramedic. So we're really kind of proud and excited about that. And Aiden is our middle son, and he's going to be in 11th grade.
Yeah, going to be a junior.
He's going to be a junior. And then our daughter, Olivia, who's going to be in 8th grade. So
final year of middle school.
Man, it is. And I love those middle school years, but kind of ready for them to be done too. So as she is too. But
I bet.
Yeah, so that's Megan and I. 22 years of marriage, man, and she is the best part of me for sure.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Well, so you have been in South Florida for the past 3 years or so, right?
Yep, a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
But I was born and raised in Palm Beach County.
Okay,
so that's where I was. Megan was raised in Kendall, in Miami. So her mom still lives there. My mom still lives.
So
in West
native
Palm.
Floridians.
Yeah, native Floridians.
Boy,
Boynton Beach.
That's a rare deal. Again, kind of the same thing. Pastor Dustin, he's a native Central Florida guy. He and TJ both.
Yep.
That's very cool.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about your background with Pastor Dustin.
Great.
And where you work together up in Georgia.
Yeah, so it's probably like 6-7 years ago. And at the time I was working at 12 Stone Church in Atlanta. And my job there was to oversee kids and students, kind of like what Tammy does. But
on the global.
Yeah, at that point we had 9 campuses.
I was going to say, you had a lot of campuses.
So we had 9 campuses and a booming residency program, internship and stuff. So kind of giving leadership and oversight to that. And one of the campus pastors who's a really good friend with Dustin and myself, Kevin Queen, who is in Nashville, good friend. And he's like, man, I want you to meet this guy to come on and be part of our team. And so Dustin and I met at a Waffle House, and it was supposed to be—
Good stuff happens at Waffle House.
Great stuff happens at Waffle House.
I like that.
45 minutes turned into about 2.5 hours.
I bet.
And we just sat, we talked, and we laughed, and we shared stories, and were inspired. And then Dustin had some other things to go. And then here's the funny story: is probably like 20 minutes later, he called me and he goes, "Hey, I got a problem." I'm like, "What happened?" I thought maybe he got in an accident or like lost his wallet or something. He's like, "I can't get the car in reverse." It was a 6-speeder, and it had all of this stuff in it. And I'm like, well, and he's like, I've looked on YouTube, I've called friends, and he was a little embarrassed, but nothing to be embarrassed. And I went up there and I'm like, oh, man, I'm just going to put it in here and reverse car. I couldn't figure it out. So we're like 50.
And he felt a lot better after that too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're intelligent guys sitting there like, how do you reverse them? Like, this isn't a trick or anything like that. And so we literally pushed it out of Waffle House. And for the next 3 days of interviews, he did not He didn't move. He's like, I'm backing into every parking space, and I've got to be able to get out in that way. So, but from that point on, it was great. And then TJ, his wife, she came and worked in children's ministry at our main campus. And so worked with TJ a little bit more day to day. And then Dustin was at our first campus, but our other largest campus. And
did TJ report to you at
she reported to our children's pastor
who
at that
reported
campus.
to you?
Yeah, but TJ, man, super sharp and like
awesome.
Knew what she was doing and teacher background, and she was great. And so having her on that team was awesome.
So you and Megan and Dustin and TJ have a great background. You ministered in the same church, 12 Stone Church.
Yeah.
Kids are similar ages.
Kids are in the same grades.
Jacob graduated this year. Riley Agard graduated this year.
Yeah.
So your oldest, both of you.
All three of them are in the same grade.
Are they really?
Yeah. So Jacob and Riley, I have a picture of them when they were young, just volunteering in production and tech in children's ministry. So they used to go run the sound and all of that stuff. And then Olivia and Darby are in the same age and doing that. And so they were both probably 4 or 5 when we moved there, and then maybe a little bit older, 7, because Dustin came after we were there. And then Callie, Joy, and Aiden are the same age too. So
that relationship that you and Pastor Dustin developed, and when he left and then you left, I don't know who left first.
He left first.
He left first, came here, and then you moved to back to your home area. Worked at a church there.
Yeah, he broke my heart. He left first.
Okay, gotcha. So he broke up first.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Queen kind of left first. He set the domino.
Yeah, we'll blame Queen.
Yeah. So then Dustin comes here, but his relationship with you continued on to the point where I know there were different times we'd encounter something. Maybe it was related to Next Gen. Maybe it was a question that needed a different perspective. Maybe it was a staff member that just needed some coaching.
Yeah.
He had you on speed dial. Dustin would call you a lot and say, hey, because that's where I heard your name. And of course, in just what they called each other, Monahan. I mean, I never knew his first name was Kevin.
Most people didn't.
Monahan.
Yeah.
He said, so I'm going to call Monahan.
Yeah.
And so you helped out, I think with Pastor Christian Wilson, you did some coaching with him.
Yeah, I had. Well, Dustin, it's so amazing how God puts good friendships together. And sometimes you don't even know it's happening.
Right.
You're just like, you connect with people, and then there's always seasons, like you go and you're like, for life happens and you kind of move on. But then there's just people that you really connect with. And so many things I've loved about Dustin, his heart for the lost and wanting to develop leaders and caring for the least of these too. He was always like, man, how do we make everybody feel welcome?
Right.
And how do we make people feel like they're invited to be part of this, and developing leaders and interns and all of that stuff. And Dustin's so smart and witty too. His dry sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
Just I love in all of that. And we would come up here, it's not too far away. We'd come up here and visit and have lunch with them and do all that stuff. But yeah, I think I came up here one time. Dustin's like, hey, I wanted you to do teach some of our staff and some of this with mandatory reporting and some of the legal aspects of making sure that, man, we want to be good stewards of our time and money, but also, man, this is a safe environment physically, emotionally for students. How do we develop leaders? How do we talk about some of those things in order to make sure this is a great environment? And so I came up here. I think you sat in with us for a little bit.
I did. In
the reference room in there, and then sitting with interns and residents
That's probably a couple years ago, wasn't it? Maybe longer. I don't know.
It probably had to be at least 2-3 years ago.
Right.
And being part of that and connecting, and but Dustin and I were, definitely friends first.
Yeah.
And so in this of accountability and questions and stuff like that.
Well, and not just friends, but people that respected each other professionally. And I know Dustin holds you in high regard professionally, and just your and so let's go back to what you said, mandatory training, things like that. So you've got quite the background in Next Gen Ministries. So let's talk a little bit about just your educational preparation. And I know Pastor Kim said I don't like to talk about myself, but I think it's important that people know your credentials. in particularly some of these areas of upper leadership.
Sure.
So talk about your education.
I would tell you this. I think, experiences are great.
Yeah, right.
It's probably one of the best. And so you have this, when I was in college, I was asked after my freshman year to come be an intern, a middle school intern in South Florida, and did that under some great leaderships who from that point were like, hey, mentorship, discipleship, encouragement, being good stewards of your environment. So I got that really close on, and then finished my undergrad. And I always liked school, and I always that. My father's a lawyer, my mom's a teacher,
okay.
And so part of that education was my sister was a school counselor, got a master's in all of that, and so very early on, education was part of it. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I dabbled in law school for a little bit, and then I was like, man, that's not exactly what I want to do. I really love the church. And so I spent some time in counseling and doing working on a master's in that, as well as a master's of divinity at Wake Forest, and loved integrating that, and thought for a season, I thought I was going to do a private practice and do some of that stuff. But I really just love the local church. And I've always felt the local church needs some of the best people too.
Yeah.
And you can have volunteers in that, but it shouldn't be like, oh man, if it doesn't work in the real world, I'm going to go work in the church. I think I think some of the best, smartest people should be in the local church.
Amen to that. Well, so just for those of you keeping track at home, we got a legal background in your background there. Your dad was a lawyer, so you did a little dabbling in that. We got a counseling background, got a next-gen background.
Yeah.
Perfect executive pastor profile.
Yeah.
I mean, you got it all there, Pastor Kevin.
Well, I tried, man. I've been blessed, and then, I ended up getting the opportunity to go in the doctorate program at Liberty.
And what'd you get your doctorate in?
It's in pastoral counseling, and so that's kind of the focus in that, and that was the integration of both, man, how do I take some of the clinical stuff I learned, but also in the way of I didn't want to just day to day. Be a counselor. I wanted to be able to, I'm a pastor at the end of the day. Yeah. And so all of these other, whether it's business, and I love HR and all of that stuff, part of my stuff at 12 Stone was focusing on HR, recruitment, development, onboarding, assessments. I love assessments, and how do we grow and, know yourself and know each other so that we can be like, hey, I want to be able to learn how to encourage you the most, or how to honor you the most as employees and all that stuff. And so been teaching at the graduate level for Liberty University for the last
That's on, and you do that online?
Online, yeah. A good friend of Dustin and I, Derek, left, I think right before Dustin, and he oversees the whole student ministry.
This is Derek Idle.
Derek Idle, student ministries program at Liberty University, the undergrad. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, he's like, "Hey, we want to create a master's degree in next gen," and so worked with him, and then the current dean, Troy Temple, who used to be my student pastor. We sat there and kind of created this Masters of Art in Next Gen, part of that. And then for the last 2 years, I've been helping them with their internship program, and interns each semester developing next generational leaders. So that's where I'm at.
Probably 80% of our residents and interns have a Liberty background.
I've noticed that.
I mean,
great.
so there's a pipeline.
Yeah.
And
but I love the diversity too of different schools and all of that stuff, because it even me, for 3 different schools to be part of, you bring some of that diversity and thinking about things different, which I think is a great way to grow and learn from each other and stuff. So that's kind of what I love. I'm very curious about anything. I love problem solving. So it's hey, what do we do with this? Well, let's kind of figure that out, and let's get the best people in the room, and best idea wins, and collaboration, and let's make sure that we just give God our best at the end of the day.
Well, I think you can see that Pastor Kevin is very well qualified for the role. And I want to talk just a little bit about executive pastor and why that's important that we have that right now. So I know, Pastor Dustin brought the residence program here. He's the primary teacher for that. Yeah. He kind of carried a lot of freight on that. Yeah. Pastor Dustin right now, up until your coming, has really kind of been the my chief of staff is the best way maybe people could relate to that. So all the pastors have reported to Pastor Dustin. And we set that up as part of our succession planning. I wanted Dustin to have that. So Dustin has been doing the function of an executive pastor in many ways, even though I said, Dustin, I know you're not an executive pastor, but I want you to get a feel for this, and I want you to understand this. And that probably led to say, if I'm going to be the new lead pastor, I need an executive pastor. And I said, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And so it was on our radar to do this probably in 2023 to look for this, because the timeline I had in succession was it was going to be later than, but the timeline moved up. So I'm stepping out at the end of December as lead pastor of Journey. Of this year, Pastor Dustin takes over as lead pastor in January of 2023. And so Dustin wisely said to the elders, hey, can we move up the search for the executive pastor role? And I know he reached out to you not to offer you the job because he thought there's no way Kevin Monahan is going to be available.
I wasn't at first. I didn't even make the list. He had the list.
He said he had a list of about 30 people.
Didn't even make the list.
You didn't even make the list. But he called you about people on the list, and then that.
We were having breakfast here in Orlando
Really?
in February. My wife and I were. And he was like, man, I'm just praying and for it. And who do you know? And I got in the car and Megan's like, you're going to pray about that, aren't you, a little bit? And I'm like,
no.
Pray and and praying everything, right? So that was, but yeah, go on.
And that led to that conversation about you and him getting back together and saying, I think you say, hey, tell me a little bit more about this.
Yeah. And he did. And we just thought and prayed through it. And Dustin, you want to be, at the same time, you want to be like, hey, I want to find God's timeline and join with him at that. But then there's also the other logistics of moving and leaving one church and being part of another, and family and all of that stuff. And is it right? Just because you're friends doesn't mean it's going to work well.
Right, exactly.
And we wanted to go through that. But I remember sitting with him, and then I'm like, well, let me talk to Pastor John. And as soon as I talked to you, my friend, I was like, this is where I want to be, because this is where the Lord is, and that's where I want to be. So that was, and just seeing him, just how he honors you and how he cares, and both of you together. It's like, man, that's kind of unique, and to work with somebody that I love and respect for so long is such a joy. And I know you talk about my qualifications, but I feel like I'm the one who's blessed to be part here and to be joining this team for sure.
Well, I know, Pastor Dustin, as he kind of obviously kept me up to date on the search and who he was talking to. But when you emerged, we were like, can you believe this? I mean, seriously, could this really happen? And then you and I talked, and I said, hey, you get my vote, Dustin. I'm all for this guy.
Well, those are kind words.
This seems like too good to be true. Yeah. And then it just kept on moving, and then obviously your family needs to be a part of all that.
Oh yeah, Megan and TJ had to give the thumbs up. Let's be honest. That's that's got to happen,
as it should be.
As it should be, 100%.
So then everything comes together, and I've said this about Pastor Dustin because people have asked, where did you find him? And I said, I didn't find him. I really didn't. God just. He dropped him here. He really did. God dropped Dustin in our lap, and if you've heard our succession story, you've heard us talk about that. But in a lot of the same way, Kevin, I feel the same way about you. God just kind of dropped you here, and in ways that we weren't expecting, even beyond what we were hoping and expecting for. So, and that's not any pressure on you. That's just the goodness of God, I think. To us and to you, as
for
well.
Sure.
And
I received that. I feel good about that. I feel chosen almost, like that God has chosen me and my family to be part of this. So it is my honor.
As part of the succession plan, and I speak for the elders on this as well. When Dustin was named to be our lead guy, one of the things that we said is he needs to have an executive pastor.
Yeah.
Because Pastor Dustin carries a lot of load for us already. He started the residence program. He's kind of the primary teacher for that. Yeah. He's been chief of staff for us here. All the pastors have reported to him. And, the lead pastor role carries some unique challenges, and he needs someone that can he can trust. And here's what I knew about the residence program, in particular, because Dustin is so passionate about that.
Yeah.
And he cares so much about building into those young adults.
Yeah.
He really needed someone he could trust.
Yeah.
And that's
matters.
you, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know he does completely, but he needs to feel, not just on paper, I've delegated that. Mentally, this is good.
Yeah,
This
he's
is
transferred it. Not to,
absolutely, absolutely. Everything's going to be in good hands.
Yeah.
And I know he feels that way, and we both feel that way about you. But then, the staff leadership. There's a fair amount of just one-on-one meetings.
Yeah.
People maybe say, "Well, so what do you guys do?" Well, there's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of just some coaching.
Yeah.
There's just some different initiatives that have to be led. And the executive pastor is really important. So when I learned that you understood who you were, your background, you and Dustin's relationship, I already felt great about Pastor Dustin being our lead pastor. But when you emerged, it was the final piece in so many ways, Kevin. And it was just like, Lord, it's kind of like Simeon, the old guy in the temple.
Yeah.
When he meets Jesus, he says, "Lord, your servant can depart in peace." Yeah. And I felt like, Lord, I can exit in peace, knowing not only that Dustin's going to be a great lead pastor, but he's going to have somebody like you as a top shelf leader that's going to run alongside him.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your kind words, and I'm glad that I'm able to do that, because my prayer has always been, I've never been felt called to be a lead pastor. I like being kind of leading from the second chair and being supportive and being in all of that. And so, man, especially someone like Dustin that I've worked with before and I love and trust, and it's easy for me to submit to his leadership and to your leadership, but at the same time, it's easy to be like, let's go after this together. And I feel like there's such a unity, and I feel the weight of that responsibility for that too.
Yeah, right.
And I want to honor him and be a good steward to the Lord of what he's given us. But I think it's going to be great. And when it fits like that, it's just the Lord. Amen. And you know that it's, sometimes I have to pinch myself. It felt like maybe it's too easy or too going in there of like, God, what are you doing? And I'm just so thankful for it, for this opportunity. And I really believe our best days are ahead.
I completely
and I'm
agree,
super
Kevin.
excited about being able to take some things off of Dustin's plate, but also to focus that where he can still pour in some of those leaderships. And you're teaching our residents this month and all of that.
Enjoying
and
that.
Still being able to do that where the day-to-day and some of the administration, organizational stuff, you don't have to worry about. So I think it's going to be great.
And part of the reason I've been able to, I love preaching. I think that's my primary gift, but it takes time.
It does.
It takes time to put messages together. Yeah. And Pastor Roddy Connor, who is the guy that you're replacing in many ways. Pastor Roddy was my executive pastor for several years. But having somebody take those responsibilities off of the lead guy so he can focus, as the apostle said in Acts chapter 6, prayer and the ministry of the word.
Yep.
We want to give our attention to prayer and the ministry of the word.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to have preparing messages. I'd say half my week is taken up just in reading, studying, preparing, writing, things like that.
Oh, and it comes across that way too.
And so, Pastor Dustin is going to be conscientious. He's going to give time to that. Yeah. And you're going to give him the freedom and the capacity to do that. So, Kevin, we're so glad to have you. We could talk a lot more.
Yeah, we could.
And we will. Kevin's going to join me in June on Midweek Conversations while Pastor Dustin is away on a study break. Pastor Dustin's preparing himself for a new series he'll be doing in July. But hey, we just kicked off a new series this past Sunday called Things to Know Before You Go. Exactly. And, the message this past week was on aging. Yeah. And we ended up with 7 people being baptized, and most of them were young people. Yeah. They were kids. Yeah. So we kind of pointed that out this morning when we were talking. Isn't it funny that on a sermon on aging that we had kids that responded and gave their life to Christ. So we're excited about that. This Sunday we'll continue on in that series. I'll be doing that message as well. Looking forward to that. And hope you can join us. Things to know before you go. If you didn't see last week's message, you can see the link here and you can catch up with us on that. But 9:30, 11:15 a.m. at Apopka at Lake County or online. We would love to have you join us this week. Pastor Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
All right.
All right.
And as always, we're loving the journey.